Welcome back to Remarks with Republicans. I'm Colin Weber, and today I'm sitting down with Audrey Hall, chairwoman of the Hancock County Republican Central Committee. We'll be talking about her role leading local Republican efforts, what it takes to organize at the county level, and her vision for keeping Hancock County strong and engaged in the political process. Let's jump into the conversation. Remarks with Republicans is starting right now. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little about your role or involvement with the Republican Party?
Sure. My name is Audrey Hall. I'm the chairman of the Hancock County Republican Central Committee. In short, my role is to help shape the local Republican Party's direction and impact. So most of my key responsibilities are leadership, communication, volunteer coordination, working with candidates, trying to find candidates for certain positions, and everything else that entails.
What inspired you to get involved in politics or public service?
For me, it was during COVID. Just watching the way that our state, our county board, our school board, watching the way that everyone was handling that situation, it really made me just take a long, hard look at our leadership. I saw a lot of things going in what I felt was the wrong direction, and it made me want to kind of step in and make an impact, mostly for my children.
What values or principles matter most to you as a Republican?
I would say definitely limited government, fiscal responsibility, individual freedom and rights. Those are probably the main ones.
What do you think are the biggest challenges facing conservatives today?
Oh, that's a good one, because there are a lot. One big one I would say would be the changing media landscape. So, in the past, there was a lot of, journalists were part of like a legacy media, right? And there were, maybe a handful of outlets that you needed to reach out to get your message out. And now, there's a lot of independent journalism, which is great. But, instead of, just having a few sources to get your message out to, you've got, dozens upon dozens of that. And there's also a bit more journalistic bias, I feel, nowadays, which can also be good. But it makes it so that people don't really know who to believe, what side. And then that also contributes to a lot of misinformation. You've also got social media playing in the mix of, just people getting bombarded with different messages, and just the amount of misinformation that is out there is really hard to combat sometimes, because it's not necessarily who's speaking the truth, it's who's speaking the loudest. So that's a big thing to overcome.
What Republican policies do you think are making the biggest difference locally, statewide, or nationally?
Nationally, I would say, one thing that is important to a lot of Americans would be national sovereignty and border security. That has become a big one. The other thing, and this is thanks to Trump, is just kind of the return of common sense policies. Things that are simple, like, personal fiscal responsibility. Let's shut the water faucet off of money just flowing out of our country. And other common sense policies, such as, not having men in women's sports, or not allowing men into women's personal spaces. Things like that, I think, are very important Republican policies at a national level. At a state level, and gosh, I'm probably going to sound negative here, but there are not a lot of good Republican policies statewide, unfortunately. Our state, the state of Illinois, has become kind of a cesspool of Democratic politics. There's a lot of wasteful spending. There's a lot of corruption. There is overtaxation, poor budgeting, and it's really infiltrated the state of Illinois, and it's hard to really point to any good Republican policies that are making Illinois a good state. And I think that's one thing that makes our national policies even more important, and it also makes our local policies even more important. So then as far as locally, talking about like the county board, having a balanced budget. Our county board in Hancock County is amazing. We've got a balanced budget, which really helps our citizens. We don't have to add any additional tax burdens to our citizens because of that. And everybody appreciates that because we are already taxed enough at a state level. And then, more just common sense policies. And we're able to, at a local level, try to insulate ourselves a little bit from the state politics and the Democratic policies, coming from Chicago. And of course, we can't 100% protect ourselves from the terrible state policies, but, our county board does their best to help insulate us from as much as they can. So that's extremely important.
How do you think we can better communicate conservative values to younger generations?
I would say probably our biggest tool is social media. And again, I know we've talked about social media. That can be a good or bad thing. But the younger generations rely heavily on social media for their news, for their entertainment, for most things. And so I think that is, with younger generation, that is the best way to get our messages out there is by using social media.
What local issues matter most to the voters you talk to?
I'd say one thing that I hear from most voters locally is that they feel that their vote does not matter in Springfield. They feel that Illinois is such a Democratic state and that we are so heavily controlled by Chicago that their vote doesn't matter. And that's probably the biggest complaint I have as well. What's the point of what you're doing, because it doesn't matter here in Illinois. And I get it. I understand why people feel that way, honestly, because I have had times where I've felt that way, right? But what I can tell people is that, and I know it sounds cliche to say, well, your vote does matter, but it really does. And the thing is if everyone were to band together, and we could get Pritzker out of office, we could get some of these corrupt Democrat politicians out of office. And Tom DeVore, he's wonderful. He's got the numbers, but he's pointed out to us many times before that if all of the Republican voters that came out in 2024 and voted for Trump, if we could get all of those voters out to vote Pritzker out of office, we could get him out of office. Because there was more voters that voted for Trump in 2024 than there were voters that voted for Pritzker in his last gubernatorial election. So we can do it. Our vote does matter. We just have to band together and do it. And we did it once. We did it in 2024. We voted for Trump, and so let's do it for Illinois, and let's get Pritzker out. That's going to be our the beginning to the end of these terrible Democratic policies.
How can everyday people get more involved in the political process?
I would say probably the most important and most powerful thing that people can do to start with is attend meetings. So whether that be, going to your local school board meeting, whether that be going to your local township meeting, your city council meeting, your county board meeting, the Republican Central Committee, we meet the third Tuesday of every month at the courthouse, second floor courtroom, 5:30 p.m. And we always welcome people, to come to our meetings. Come see what we're about, get involved if you would like to. But it's the same way with other school board. It's open to the public. County board meetings, they're open to the public. Go there. See what's going on. See if there's things that you like, things that you don't like. Are you happy with status quo? Do you see things and you're like, hey, that's messed up. I need to get involved and I need to make a difference. That's probably the first thing that I would recommend to everyone.
Who's a Republican figure, past or present, you really admire, and why?
I would have to say Abraham Lincoln. He was a great leader, obviously, but he combined moral conviction with political skill in a time where our nation was, was in an extraordinary crisis. He did that, and he did an amazing job of it. He was humble. He tried to understand, even those who opposed him. And I think that he just exhibited so many signs of a great leader that, I wish we could see in more of our elected officials today.
If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Probably to have a better skincare regime, starting in my 20s instead of waiting until I'm in my 40s.
What gives you hope about the future of the Republican Party?
I see so many people that are actually wanting to take our country back, and that is a breath of fresh air. And I attribute a lot of that to the change in administration between Biden and Trump. And again, a lot of that is just the policies that Trump has put into place that, I refer to as common sense policies of like, hey, let's keep men out of women's sports. Let's give women's sports back to women. Let's let women feel safe in bathrooms by not having to worry about men going into their bathrooms. Just things like that. And it's given people a sense of hope. It's given them a sense of strength of, hey, we can stand up to this craziness, all of this, wokeness, and, let's take our country back. Let's shut the borders down. If you want to come into our country, great, but do it legally. Things that just seem common sense. And I think that it started a movement, and it's gaining traction, and it does give me a lot more hope for our future. And I'm hoping that at some point we can do the same thing with Illinois that, we've done on a national level.
In one sentence, what does a Republican mean to you?
To me, I would say that being a Republican means valuing individual liberty, personal responsibility, limited government, and a strong commitment to your personal values and to the Constitution.
Thanks for speaking with me.
Well, thank you very much, Colin. I appreciate your time.